In 2026, the best way to make money podcasting is by positioning yourself as the expert. I know a lot of people like to go the sponsor route. They want to get the affiliate marketing. They want to get the brand deals. But if you want to make money and you want to make it fast, you got to position yourself as the expert. That is the best possible way to make money on your podcast in 2026. And in this video, we're going to talk about the top 5 ways to position yourself as the expert on your podcast. But first, why should you listen to me? My name is Edwin Melendez. I've been podcasting for the better part of the last decade. I've been everywhere you would want to be as a podcaster. I've been with SiriusXM where they wrote articles about me. Here's my little handsome picture right there. I've been with iHeart. I'm currently with Spotify. I have a school community where I also coach 100 plus podcasters and teach them how to convert 5 to 7 new high ticket clients every single month. If you're interested in joining the school community, then make sure you check out the link in the bio. But anyway, let's talk about positioning yourself as the expert. I'm going to take, the next 15, 20 minutes of your life to really dial in and talk about how this is the strategy that you want in 2026 as a podcaster. So if you can't dedicate the next 10, 15, maybe 20 minutes to really locking in on this information and all the value I'm about to give you, then maybe this video is not for you, and that's okay. But for the people who are ready, ladies and gentlemen, let's get into this right now because I'm about to drop game. Let's go right into strategy number 1. No fluff, no BS. You know how I like to do it here on this channel. Let's go right into it. And number 1, the strategy is to teach frameworks, not opinions. What experts do differently, they don't just talk, they teach structured thinking. That is the number 1 strategy, in my opinion, because if you talk about, what you think may work, as opposed to talk about what you know will work, then what has more conviction? Talk about what you know will work, right? And if I'm somebody who is your perfect client, your perfect avatar, your ideal listener, and I am told a strategy that I know will work, I'm going to believe it a lot more than, oh yeah, you could try this. It may work. It may not work. It's not, it's not for everybody. It worked for me, but I don't know if it'll work for you. That's not positioning yourself as the expert, So you want to, in your podcast, name your frameworks, repeat them often, and reference them across episodes. That is a very key part. Instead of saying, here's what I think works, say, this is the 3-part framework I used with every client. You see how that really positions yourself as someone who is a leader, someone who's knowledgeable, and someone who has past experience making sure that these frameworks work before you even come on a podcast to talk about them. Frameworks turn you from a creator into a source. And that is also key because when you are looked at as the source, you're looked at as the expert. If you're just a creator, you're one of a million, you're one of a billion, you are just another voice in the, giving information that falls into the void. But if you're looked at as the expert in your niche and you're giving that framework to your listeners, then it's going to be taken a lot more serious than if, Joe Schmo said it and said it as an opinion. The next strategy is diagnose problems publicly. What this means, experts are great at identifying problems before selling solutions. Identify the problem. This way, your listener could relate to it. This way, your listener could feel like, okay, this is exactly what I'm looking for. This is exactly what I need to hear because I am also dealing with this problem. If you give the solution before you tell the problem, then the person with the problem is not going to realize that the problem that they have is the problem that you're talking about. Now, I know that is a mouthful, but it is so true. So let's break that down one more time. If you give the solution to the problem before mentioning the problem, then the person with the problem is not going to realize that the problem that they have is the problem that they're talking about. Listen. I know that's a mouthful and you don't have to remember that. Just know that before you even give the solution to problems, state the problem publicly so the listener knows exactly what you're about to talk about and how it can relate to them. How this applies, break down common mistakes, audit scenarios, and call out hidden revenue leaks. This podcast isn't failing because of downloads. It's failing because there is no conversion path. That's an example. If you break down the problem, then there's more of a chance for a listener to look at you as the sole answer to that issue, to that problem. And that is key because I always say it on every single one of these videos. Your next step for your listeners should naturally lead them to work with you. So if you're the answer to their problems, if you're publicly talking about the problems that they have and how you could fix them, and here's a list of solutions that worked for other people's in the same situation as you, then naturally I will want to work with you if I'm going to listen to that podcast that has the same problems of other people that you worked with in the past. Diagnosis builds trust faster than motivation ever will. Strategy number 3, speak to one buyer, not everybody. I talk about this all the time. Before you even start an episode, really try to understand who your ideal client is, really understand who your ideal listener is, and really understand who this podcast is for. And then when you really pinpoint who exactly you're trying to talk to, when you really pinpoint who exactly this podcast is for, that is where you structure your episodes around that person. You structure your episodes around that ideal client, because that's going to bring you that ideal client. So it is very important that you're not talking to a wider range of people and you're talking to your exact ideal client, because you want that person to feel personally attached to your podcast. You want that person to feel personally helped by your podcast, because like I said in the last strategy, that's going to naturally lead them to want to work with you. So it is so important, uber important. If you don't listen to any other of these strategies, make sure you put a little star next to this one, because it is super important to dial in on who you want to talk to, who your ideal client is, and structure your episodes around that, because that's how you're going to get paid faster, because that one person equals one download, but could also equal a high ticket client, as opposed to waiting to get 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 downloads to get some money. You just need that one person. That one person could feel personally attached to your podcast and could relate to the message that you're saying. They're going to want to work with you. It is the natural flow of progression. It is the natural way that you take a listener and lead them to your coaching, lead them to your business, lead them to your courses. That is so important, to speak to one buyer, not everyone. Experts positioning requires exclusion. So how to do this? Call out who the podcast is for from the jump. Even if it's in your descriptions, in your titles, call out who the podcast is for. If I'm struggling with my weight and I'm looking for a fitness coach and you're a fitness expert, call that out. This podcast is for people who are struggling with their weight after trying yada, 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 yada. Call that out. Say who it is not for. This podcast is not for the people who lack discipline. This podcast is not for the people who are looking for fluff and looking for a motivational companion, And then use language your ideal buyer already uses. It's all about relatability. That is exactly how they're going to want to relate to your message and go on to the next step. Example, this show is for podcasters who want clients, not sponsors, not fame, not vanity metrics. Clarity creates authority. Number 4, use proof-based storytelling. Experts don't flex, they explain results. In a day and age where everybody thinks every coach is, a scam, in a day and age where trust is at an all-time low, in a day and age where everybody thinks that everybody's looking for the come up, everybody's looking for a quick buck, it is very important to build trust. And the only way you could build trust is by showing proof that you know exactly what you're talking about, that you're an expert in your field and you've helped people with these problems before. So it is so important to always show proof. And if you're doing it as a podcaster, then you have to basically put your proof into storytelling. You have to tell the stories that prove that you are the expert, that prove that you have the solutions, that prove that you are the answer to your ideal client's problems. So how to do this? You share client transformations. You break down before and after scenarios and you explain why something worked. You just don't say that, hey, this guy came to me and he was 500 pounds and I, worked with him for 3 months and now he lost 200 pounds. Explain what you did that was differently than everybody else. Explain why you are the expert. Here's an example. Here's what we changed in this podcast and why it led to book calls. You explain what you did differently and the results. You explain what you did differently and you talk about the outcome. Make it outcome based. But by explaining what you did differently is what the proof is made of. That's going to make people trust in you. Because if you just say, hey, I could take you to the promised land, but I'm not going to tell you how I could get there, you sound like every other scammer and every other fake coach that gives real coaches like me a bad name. And I'm tired of people who are experts but have no proof to back it up. So proof positions you as someone who understands outcomes, not just theories. It is so important to have your proof, have your testimonials, tell the stories that your listener could say, hey, you know what? I've tried 1,000 different things and nothing worked. This guy is saying something different. This girl is saying something different. Let's see what they have to say. Wow, I never tried that before. I want to work with this person. It's all about building trust. And you cannot build trust if you don't have the proof to show that you are exactly what you say you are. And if you're trying to be positioned as the expert, you can never be the expert if you have no proof to back it up. So make sure that you have testimonials and proof to back it up if you want to be positioned as the expert in 2026, because nowadays, scammers, and fake coaches, they're not going to be relevant anymore because the world knows what they're trying to do. The world knows that there are a bunch of bullshit artists out there, and the world knows that if you want my trust, you got to provide the proof. And number 5, lead every episode with a clear next step. I always talk about it. The CTA is so important. One clear CTA. Where is the next logical step for your ideal listener once they get value from your show to go on? Experts guide decisions. If listeners don't know what to do next, you're positioned as entertainment. And here's how to fix it. 1 CTA per episode. Don't do the, hey, I have, here's all my social medias and you can follow me on all my social medias. Also hit the subscribe button on my YouTube. Also check out my school community. Also, hey, buy my new ebook on Amazon. And also I have a course that's on Stan Store. And also check out my Etsy because I have some really... 1 clear CTA. Where is the next logical destination for your ideal listener to go to after they turn off your podcast? Tie the CTA to the problems discussed. It's all about positioning yourself as the expert. So if I am a listener and I'm dealing with a problem and you showed me and proved to me on your podcast that you had the answer to that problem, then how am I going to find the answers working with you? How am I going to find the answers not just by listening to you, but work with you one-on-one? You have to have the CTA be completely in line with the problem discussed. You want the CTA to be, if you got value from this and you have the same issues that we talked about on this podcast, then follow me here and we could, book a call and I could coach you one-on-one. Or it has to be direct. It has to be in line and tied to the problem discussed, because that problem discussed is going to make your ideal customer and your ideal client want to work with you. So how can they work with you? That's why you start taking away the social medias. That's why you start taking away the Stan Stores and the Etsy's and all the other shit. You want to make sure that this is the sole destination. My sole CTA is you listen to the podcast, now come here and book a call with me. If this episode hits, the next step is a private strategy call. Directions equal leadership. So what weakens expert positioning? 1, chasing trends. Every year there's going to be 1,000 trends, especially in podcasts. There's 1,000 trends, and everybody who's trying to chase the next trend and go viral and, try to work the algorithms, you're going to be looked at as a follower. You're going to be looked at as someone who is not a leader, because a leader builds the trend. A leader positions themselves on the side where they're doing their own thing and they're making their own money because they have something that works, as opposed to trying to copy the next, viral sensation, because at that point, you're just looking for vanity metrics. Over interviewing without context. This is very important. You could bring on a bunch of people. You could bring on, guests to your podcast, but if the context is not answering the problems to the ideal listener, then it's for all or nothing. You want to make sure that it all fits your niche. It all fits the problems that your ideal listener will have. Because even if you have a podcast where you have interviews, those interviews should still lead you to the next position, that lead you to the next step of working with you. Long intros, we talked about this on the framework. Long intros, a no-go. Start your show with a strong hook that really grasps your attention, and then give an intro, but don't make it no more than 30 seconds. Like I've seen some intros go for like 5 minutes, and it's like, whoa, like when's the show going to start? So long intros could be very detrimental and could really, really, really take you out of the experience of the podcast. And to be honest, as not only a lover of podcasting, but a fan of podcasts, I'll tell you this right now, long intros ruin my retention. Talking without a point. If you're just babbling, if there is no structure, if you're not giving sound bites to wake your listeners back up, that's going to hurt your positioning. And avoiding clear offers. You got to be direct. This all goes into sales, right? You don't want to be like, okay, so, what could happen next is you could work with me, but if you still need more time, you could go on my social media and check out these videos that might answer any problem. No. Clear. One CTA, clear. Your next step is to book a call with me. Let's work together. How expert positioning leads to monetization. Now, this is what I was talking about. If you want to make money in 2026 on your podcast, this is how you're going to make the money on your podcast. And when you position yourself correctly, you don't convince, you attract. You don't sell, you enroll. And your podcast becomes pre-sales. Your podcast becomes the catalyst for your coaching. Your podcast becomes the catalyst for people wanting to buy into your courses. This is how podcasts turn into client acquisition engines in 2026. This is how you're going to become an expert in 2026 on your podcast. This is how you're going to make money being positioned as the expert on your podcast in 2026. So with that being said, if you would like to learn how to implement this to your podcast, if you would like to start building your clientele to 5 to 7 high ticket paying clients every single month, then below I'm going to link my calendar. Book a call with me. We'll take a look at your podcast and we'll help implement this to your show. So with that being said, I'll catch you on the next one. Thank you so much for taking the time to check out this video.